Okay. Oh, somebody else could start it. Great. So it looks like we are now recording.
Yes, that was me somehow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. um, okay, great. So now we're recording here, and we will have these meetings posted on the, and they'll be I'll send out an email of the recording and notes, and it'll be posted on the CEDEN website. Oh, and now my screen's, let's try this again. Okay, we're good. Okay, so, and basically our best contact for all of these staff is to just email the CEDEN inbox, the CEDEN at waterboards.ca.gov, because all of us check that inbox, and so someone will get your request or question or anything CEDEN related. This email address is the best contact. And so I don't know if anyone here, but like Jarma no longer works on the program, so she's not the right person to reach out to. You should get a response from CEDEN at waterboards.ca.gov. Okay, so I want to just talk a little bit about the Waterboard CEDEN inbox data submission process. So hopefully most of you are aware we have several regional data centers that all feed in and make up CEDEN. So we have our Waterboards CEDEN data center, and that's like what you reach through CEDEN inbox emails, or if you submit through the Waterboard CEDEN data checker, that's where that one is going. We also have our Moss Landing Marine Lab regional data center. We have the San Francisco Bay Area Regional Data Center, which is managed by SFEI. We have the Central Valley Regional Data Center, which is managed by MLJ Environmental. And then we also have the Swamp Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program Regional Data Center, which we often call Swamp IQ. So these are all different data centers that can load data, and then it goes into the network that we call CEDEN. So we recently, in the last year or so, made this sort of diagram to try to help folks understand how things are working right now. So we have data providers, that's a lot of you have data to submit. So you could work with one of our regional data centers. If we're Waterboard staff, you work with our Swamp Data Center, and then other folks may work with the SFEI or the Moss Landing Data Center. And then some people choose to submit through the CEDEN data checker to the Waterboards CEDEN data center. And so what's different about that one right now from a couple of years ago is that we basically, sort of due to IT constraints and lack of resources to put into it, our data loading tools are not working for the most part for our CEDEN data center. So we are, for some data types, we are sending those over to the Swamp data center. And then for others, for chemistry and field, we are just putting those straight onto the open data portal. So they are being made publicly available, and we are using those for our Waterboards processes like the 303D list, integrated report, water quality assessment process, and other Waterboards uses of the data. So if your data are loaded by one of the other regional data centers, they go into our bigger data marts, where then you can use the CEDEN query tool and find those data. Whereas if you are submitting through the CEDEN data checker, either we may redirect you to Swamp if you have like toxicity or tissue or bioassessment data, or if it's field and chemistry, it's just going to go straight onto the open data portal in what we're calling the CEDEN augmentation data set. I think it's a little bit of a complex diagram and process. So that's kind of why I wanted to go over it here. I know, people have questions. Sometimes they submitted their data and then they're looking for them and they don't realize that they're not going to be found in the query tool. They're going to be found in this augmentation data set on the Open Data Portal. And we do have a longer term goal and vision to be able to unite those data sets and have everything to be found through the CEDEN query tool. But again, it's just sort of like a lot. It's on our list of things to do, but it's just going to take some time because we are sort of stretched with resources. So it's like we need to wait for one project to be over to start that project. So do folks have any questions about this process or diagram, or have you had an experience with your data where you're confused on where it is or anything like that? Yeah. Adam, you were first. Go ahead.
Hi, Tessa. I'm actually curious about something that also sort of used to happen in the past, which was data from CEDEN eventually got passed on to WQX. And last time we had a user group meeting, where it was left was that the automated process wasn't happening anymore and hadn't been for a while, but that the idea was going to be quarterly or twice a year or something, there would be a manual push, and I just wasn't sure if that was happening or planned to be re-implemented in the future, or what's going on with that.
Yeah, the automated process is still not working or not happening. I don't think we've done manual pushes on like a quarterly basis. But I will double check on that and get back to you after this meeting. So it's possible that our other group, who's led by Kieran Cower and David Altair, may be doing that, but I kind of don't think so. But I'll double check and find out. But I'll also just raise that as like it's we are aware of that we should be getting our data into WQX. So it's also like on our list of, things we would love to have automated again one day. But maybe on the next meeting, I can give an update on like where that's at in the priorities. And
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. And then Marlene, you have a hand up.
Hi. Okay. It's a quick question about the submission process. So at the very end, once you've passed in CEDEN, you've gotten a successful submission message, then it gives you an option to like put in the RDC email or something to that effect. I was just wondering if there was a plan to at least leave text on that page that has the email addresses for the RDCs. Because right now you have to navigate away from that to go find it several clicks later, find your RDC, and then cut and paste it in. It's just really inconvenient, and there's a lot of opportunity to insert the wrong email address. That's all. That's my question. Is there an opportunity there to improve that?
Okay. So you're saying when you're submitting through like the CEDEN data checker, just to the CEDEN Water Board's data center, is that what you're saying?
Yes, after you've submitted data to CEDEN, it gives you an option to enter an email address for one of the RDCs. But it's not a radio button or anything. It just says enter.
Right. You'd have to
type it in your
it's
email
free
address.
text. You have to just type it.
Yeah. But at minimum, I think we could put text there just within the message that lists the RDC emails, so you can cut and paste it from there.
Okay. I will make a note of this request. So yeah, I guess we have been sort of minimizing the resources we put into updating anything with CEDEN because we are trying to put our resources toward getting CEDEN 2.0 sort of out the door and it working with the public. So I will investigate the level of effort it would take because like that's not something I can update. I have to work with my IT department. So it's always like just a balancing effort of like, do we take them off the project they're working on now to work on this? But I will investigate that level of effort to see what it would be like to update that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Adam.
I think I'm correct in noting also that even if you do notify an RDC that you're submitting through CEDEN, through the checker, post check, there isn't currently funding coming from the state board to the RDCs for them to then load that data for them. So it's a little bit of a leftover from a process many years ago where the RDCs were responsible for loading data after it had gone through the checker, and that's kind of not really the model anymore. But maybe that's not entirely the intention of what that email is for.
Yeah, I guess that I was thinking that too, Adam. That I'm not sure like which RDC you would need to notify because if you're submitting through us, we're gonna load it, not an RDC. So, but maybe Stacy has insight.
Yeah, that's correct. If you're loading, like we have our own data providers that use our checker and submit through us, and we don't, none of them go through the CEDEN.org checker. They all go through ours. So we wouldn't need to be listed there because we wouldn't expect them to be using that checker. They would be submitting the files directly to us for us to load. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, Marlene. Are you like what? I guess that's what I was a little confused on is like if you're working with an RDC, usually you wouldn't be checking and submitting through our water board CEDEN checker. Like,
Yeah, we aren't working with an RDC, but when you submit data through CEDEN, you get directed to a page that says enter your RDC. So then
I see. So it just feels like you're supposed to.
Exactly.
Even though you don't have a different RDC. Okay. Yeah. So maybe it would just be updating it to not have that page or not have that text there. Since that I think is from a leftover a different time. Okay. I see a couple of questions in the chat. So someone asked, do the data providers get notified whether their data goes into CEDEN or the open data portal? We do try to, well, not necessarily in an email, but it's like on our website, it's on the checker page when you click to submit your data. It does say that this is going to be in the open data portal, but it's not in the confirmation email you're going to get back after you submit. So we try to have it on our website in a few different places to try to make that more widely known. But yeah, I'm going to look into seeing how hard it would be to update some of our emails because that's an automated system. And then using Excel in the CEDEN data checker, are we going to go over the right format in the meeting today? Broderick, I don't know if I totally understand your question. If you want to ask more.
Yeah, so basically last time I updated or put in data in the CEDEN database, it was with an Excel sheet, and apparently we changed the different the format in which we upload CEDEN. So I was wondering if we were going to go over that today.
So CEDEN is still like you do still submit data in Excel templates, yes. But yes. You might be thinking of Swamp IQ.
Oh yeah, yes. Sorry, Swamp.
So
yeah.
we're not going to go over today.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I think we'll move on to our next item. Some vocabulary updates. So we made a update to our CEDEN vocabulary request template just earlier this month to add a couple business rules. And then I just wanted to get some feedback on a proposed update to the description for an effluent matrix. So we did add an analyte business rule to the vocabulary request template to specifically be for PFAS analytes, so that most of the PFAS analytes we used to have in CEDEN were the anionic forms, and we decided to get in line with the more widely used like EPA method conventions, which are the acidic forms, so that, you know, labs are supposed to be following the method, and their ELAB certification, they all use that acidic name, and they should be reporting out with those acidic names. And so we want them to be consistent. We want the database to be consistent with those requirements, and then everything lines up. So we just recently made a switch of a lot of the vocabulary for PFAS in CEDEN to be those acidic forms. And then we also added a business rule to like describe that if you're adding a new one, it should probably be the acidic form or whatever name is in like an EPA or more standardized method. And then we want to make sure every description includes the standard acronym that's used in those methods. So this is just an example of one. And then, as I mentioned, just recently in April, we kind of did a big cleanup of the existing PFAS analytes. So we end dated a lot of the anionic names and added the acidic forms. There may be a few more updates coming because we had analytes in CEDEN that were not in an EPA method. So we were kind of still researching those and, didn't want to end date them if maybe they are used by some other methods or labs, but we may update those. And we did try to add the CAS registry numbers for everything, and just make sure those PFAS names are all aligned, because I know that's a real analyte group of interest for a lot of uses right now. Okay, and then we also added a business rule for PCR methods, so polymerase chain reaction methods, which may include microbial source tracking, and other types of things that folks may look for. So this was in the method business rules. We added this because we have had a number of questions about this, of like, what is the method really supposed to describe? And so a lot of some of the existing methods that we had for PCR related to PCR constituents were really journal articles that were describing the identification of that primer set. But really the method should be the analytical procedure used to analyze that primer set. So we do still actually track those methods or those articles where the primer sets were identified, but that's when we add a new PCR analyte to be able to confirm like the forward and reverse primers and the assay name. But that's like stored in a different place. That's just like stored in our records for analyte, for confirming the analyte. So the business rule for PCR methods, it should include, sometimes the method name itself includes all these things, but if not, we would want it to include the type of analytical equipment used, which could be either quantitative PCR or digital droplet PCR, qPCR, ddPCR, the target organism the assay was developed for. So some examples are like Bacteroidales or human Bacteroidales, the type of assay used, if that applies. So just some common ones are like TACMAN and CyberGreen. So those are the things we're going to be looking for in a method request if it's for PCR. So here's one example. So this EPA 1696 is actually kind of a great method that I think a lot of you can use for most PCR analytes. If people are confused, we've worked with a couple labs where they're like confused of which method they should be reporting. And they're like, oh, well, yes, I do follow 1696, but I was referring to this, journal article that identified the primer set. So for the analytical procedure, we want you referring to something like EPA 1696, which kind of tells how you run the overall method. And then you see it's got all those different elements in the title. So that's the description we're looking for. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about on vocabulary was we recently had someone reach out and say they weren't really sure. They had stormwater samples that they wanted to submit, but they weren't really sure what matrix to report it under. And after some discussion, we decided it would just make the most sense to update the description for the effluent matrix. So our current description only refers to wastewater, but we want to add a reference to wastewater or stormwater effluent so that we can just use that same matrix for both of those. So I'm curious if there's feedback. Yeah, Adam, go ahead.
Thanks, Tessa. We have runoff. Is it meant to be distinct from runoff in that it's post-mixing?
So, yeah, I was thinking the same thing about runoff. I don't have that pulled up right now, but it seems like runoff is specific to storm runoff, so like after rain. And what the person we were talking to was saying is that even though the word is stormwater, there can be discharge basically from MS4s that is not due to precipitation. And so they want to be able to include that. And so that's why effluent, or like, to me, it's like discharge maybe is another way of saying it, but that there's basically non-storm discharge that sometimes they are sampling.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Stacy kindly added the runoff description into the chat. And go ahead.
That actually was my data. I was working with Central Coast Region on that, submitting that data. And so, yeah, Stacy's definition was runoff from a parking lot that went directly into the estuary untreated. So not in the receiving water.
Right. Huh. Yeah, I was actually talking to people in Region 9 about this, so I don't think it was your data.
Okay.
But now yeah, it's funny. I feel like we looked at the runoff definition and felt like that didn't work. But now I sort of feel like it does. So I'm going to reconsider.
Well, our runoff, I mean, it's not coming from an MS4. It's just non-point source runoff.
Yeah. But the runoff definition does include other municipal runoff. Okay, Stacy, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe just further define it in the runoff. Our other municipal runoff, and maybe add more descriptors there than changing the effluent.
Yeah, I'm going to have to circle back with the Region 9 staff who were trying to figure this out. It made so much sense. Well, that's why I brought this to the group. I had a feeling that I should get feedback. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah. So a lot of, and Tessa, I think you've worked a lot with Erica at Geosyntech and me for our Palisades Ridge Peninsula project. But as a SIMP permittee, we have to submit both stormwater and non-stormwater samples. So what we're talking about, the non-precipitation based runoff from an MS4. It seems like the water board is very interested in this kind of determination or discretization of these. Are we trying to do that in CEDEN as well? Because, a lot of different people want to go look back, especially us, and kind of discretize non-stormwater and stormwater within this runoff category, especially for, compliance. The runoff definition covers a lot of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of interesting. I know that we have it in our notes, like in the sample comment, field, we'll say receiving water dry, or, so, there's information in a lot of these projects, but it just seems like runoff could possibly be discretized a little bit more, but, obviously you guys have a lot of other things to do.
Yeah, and that is where they were coming from. So I was working with San Diego region staff, and
Right.
they were talking about how they require folks to sample MS4 discharge during non-storm times, and
Correct.
as well as during storm times. So I think you're right that their goal was to be able to distinguish those.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I just feel like if we would change the effluent description, I may want to also change something in the runoff description to like make it clear how those are really being distinguished. So
Yeah.
I think I'm going to table this, do a little more research, and maybe follow up with some people and see, try to really get clarity on the goal to make sure we're doing, if we're going to change something, that it's getting toward that goal.
Yeah, we worked with the water board. They wanted to look back into use this data set to determine, they were looking into whether they can infiltrate stormwater and non-stormwater, what the risks were for this whole California dry well, regulation. And so, it looks like people want to use this data set to make those distinguishments. So if we can, I think it would be worth it, especially within the water board as well.
Yeah, right. Exactly. The goal is to have data that can be used for decision making. So
exactly.
That would be great if we could do that with some descriptions. Okay, so I'll probably bring this back to you all again at our next meeting. Carrie, oh yeah, maybe go ahead. You're from San Diego.
Yeah, so beside parsing out the different effluent or runoff types, there was the other concern from us was to really be able to determine what is receiving water in a quick manner. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of people working on the integrated report because, we get all this data that maybe we shouldn't be analyzing and assessing, as surface water and receiving water. So there's another component to this as well.
Right, that
Yeah.
sample water is really just like should only be receiving water, and if you're using runoff or effluent, then it's like clearly not to be assessed as receiving water.
Exactly. So if there's another, something that we can parse that out easier, I guess. So yes, I would love to continue this to have a solution for that.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, that's helpful
Thank you.
feedback too. Okay, anything else on this topic or vocabulary stuff in general before we move on? Cass, go ahead.
Oh, hi, Tessa. Will the business rules, except for the matrix, be updated in your documentation online yet,
So
or we'll still wait on that?
the business rules are, I did already update them in the vocab request template. So, this is the vocab request template,
Okay.
and oops, sorry. So like this is the Analyte business rules, and so like the PFAS one has been added, and then also the PCR method one was added on the method business rules page tab of the vocab request template. I didn't. I thought it was just business rule for vocab request template, but if you think that the guidance document could also, if it should go in there somewhere too, let me know. It just
Yeah,
seemed
that's
more
the one
like,
I was thinking of, but I don't know. It was whatever, the users think as well. I'm glad you pointed this out though, as to where they are.
yeah, I know. Sometimes I forget which place to look for which guidance, because there's a lot of the vocab guidance is in the vocab request template. Assuming you're asking for a new one, and then there's other guidance of like for like specific data types, I guess, of like how to enter the different fields, like the passive sampler guidance is in the chemistry template guidance document, for example.
Right.
But yeah, if you think of something later that like if it would be helpful to have more something in a different guidance place, let me know. Okay, so I think we'll move on. So I think that we haven't had a CEDEN user group meeting since we updated the format of the CEDEN query tool. So I'm assuming most of you, if you've looked for your data, you've noticed that the CEDEN query tool looks different now than it did 2 years ago. So we kind of had a whole new format back in 2023, and then we did a couple updates in April of 2024, and then a couple more updates just this past March. So I guess I just thought, since we hadn't talked about the query tool in a user group meeting, that I would just kind of go over it, give a little overview of some of the functions, and folks can ask questions too. So you can always get there from the main CEDEN web page. If you go to find data, this CEDEN query tool is up there. And then also, if you're looking for the augmentation data set, we've got the link right there for that. And then once you're in the CEDEN query tool, you choose your data type. So it always starts at the water quality, but you can go over to tox, tissue, benthic, or habitat. So most of the filters are the same as they've always been in the old one. We did add some additional levels. You can now also filter by project. It used to just be program and parent project. And then the most recent update we did just in March, we added back this Analyte group filter that hadn't been in the original release. So that is really helpful if you're looking for like PCBs, because otherwise you had to select each individual one in the Analyte list, which is not reasonable. And I guess up here, I should have mentioned the process that you start with. You can either view the results or download the results or email them. And there's always, there's the choose to include QC or not. So those, you can see when you have nothing selected, that shows you like the total number of records that are in water quality. So 13 million. And then once you start selecting something, then all the other filters are going to update. So something that we are hoping to improve in the longer term is just overall performance, like how fast things load. You know, as I'm talking to you here, it's, you know, all updated, but, you know, when you're not in the middle of something else, it's like, it can feel like it's taking a long time to like update all of these different potential filters. So that is something longer term we're hoping to improve on. One other thing we're hoping to improve on, or update, I should say, is, yeah, for whatever reason, the developer we worked with on this sort of defaulted to a TSV file type, but I think more people are familiar and used to working with a CSV as a download option. So unless I hear otherwise, that is on my list of next updates to make, is to either replace or add the CSV file type as a download option. One thing that is kind of a cool feature that I don't think we had on our previous tool was you can, when you start typing in one of these fields, like it defaults to a starts with, but you could also switch it to a contains. So if you don't know the exact name of your program or station, etc., but you know, like it might have, you know, you kind of know the name of your creek, but it may not start with that word, you can, you know, type that in and it will search the whole name, not just the beginning of the name. So it's showing not only Russian River, but East Fork Russian River. So that's just kind of a nice option that they were able to add. So yeah, I just wanted to give a little demo. And so basically, as we are, you know, working with our IT resources, we kind of have decided or been told that we could do an update of the tool about once a year to either, you know, change something or add some functionality or something. So we just did an update this year, but if folks have ideas for things that they would like to change or add or how to make it better, I'm open to hearing that and putting that on my wish list and seeing what we can accomplish in the next year or so. So if you have ideas now, feel free to share them. You can put them in the chat. You can email me in 6 months when you get an idea. I'll add it to my list. So things we've heard from other folks, I just put up here. So about the CSV file type. For some folks, they know their station codes they know their stations more by the codes than the names. So it may be possible in the dropdown to show both the code and the name, so that it could search on both of those. And then some of our sort of bioassessment folks had some requests on benthic data to add some different filters for the organism group and for the phylum and the genus. So those are some things I've heard from other people, but you know, this is the CEDEN user group, so we're interested in feedback from all of you as well. And like I said, it's not urgent because we won't be making an update probably until, or we probably wouldn't start working on the requests and developing it with IT until like fall, winter of this year. But I just wanted to put it out there since we hadn't really talked about it. Okay, well, I want to make sure we have time to talk about CEDEN 2.0, so I'm going to move on. So I don't know if everyone's been following along on CEDEN 2.0, but the Water Board is working with EarthSoft, which is a software vendor, to customize their existing platform, which is called Equus, to intake and store CEDEN data. So basically, our goal is over the next 2 years to totally replace our existing CEDEN infrastructure and move into this new infrastructure. So the first phase that we've been working on for several years now is chemistry. And then we've kind of also concurrently been working on field results and habitat. And then our next phase would be to work on taxonomy, or like the benthic data. So we kind of need to build out each of the different data types that we store in CEDEN. So it's going to take us a couple of years to get through all of them. So chemistry is first, then and habitat, and then taxonomy, and then I'm not sure if it will be tissue or toxicity next, but those would be the remaining two after these. So I don't have a ton of detail, but I'll share this much. So our overall schedule is we are hoping to do a soft launch of testing the chemistry module with our water board's contract laboratory. So we have a laboratory that we work with for all of our water boards monitoring, and we are hoping to have them start testing the system in the second half of this summer. We think we're about ready for them to start using it. Then we are also aiming to start having the RDCs test API connections so that the RDCs can still load to the new system. We should be able to do that in summer and fall of this year. And then making sure all of our like field and habitat data submissions and the field form option that we're working on, doing testing of that late second half of this year. And then we are hoping to have the public use of the chemistry module toward the end of this year or early 2026, where it's more widely used. Okay, so Marlene asked, does this mean CEDEN will adopt the EQUA standard EDD format? No, we are not adopting their standard format. We have built our own custom format that mostly follows the existing CEDEN format with a few changes. And that's actually one of the next things I want to talk about is controlled vocabulary, just vocabulary in general. So our goal overall is to try, because we'll be in the two different environments overlapping for several years, and longer term, even when we're not in two different environments, we still want to be able to use all the historic CEDEN data that we already have stored. We want to be able to combine that with our new CEDEN 2.0 data that will be coming in, so that they're not just like totally separate siloed data sets. So one goal we have is to try to keep the vocabulary as consistent as possible between the two systems. So for now, what that means is, any new vocabulary we add to our existing CEDEN, our internal staff are also adding that to the CEDEN 2.0 environment. And so when we go live to the public with CEDEN 2.0, the vocabulary should be, comparable, up to date with our existing CEDEN system. So that, and we wouldn't want data submitters to have to request vocabulary in two separate systems. So we will make sure that it's up to date in the two. And so, a lot of the vocabulary will match exactly between the two systems, but not everything. So there are some fields that have shorter character limits in CEDEN 2.0, and that is just due to the EQUIS schema. And there's things that we are not able to change and customize within their system. So there are a few fields where we may start enforcing shorter character limits in the current CEDEN, so that we have less changes to make when we are in CEDEN 2.0, or just to have things matching exactly as much as possible. So the fields that I think will feel the most that are getting shorter that we may start limiting in CEDEN now are these three. So station code is going from 25 down to 20. I think actually most of our station codes are 20 or under, so I don't think there's a lot that will need to change, but any new station codes that are requested, we'll probably try to keep those to 20. Parent project code is going from 50 to 40. So again, hopefully that one won't hurt too much. And then the one that I think is actually going to be the hardest is method and digest extract method is going from 50 to 20. So that was the one I fought hardest about, but that one is really key to their underlying schema and we really couldn't change it. So that one is going to be hard, I think, for any time it's not like a standard EPA method, when it's like a lab SOP. That's going to be hard to squeeze into 20, but sort of better to start now than later. And then one other business rule that we're going to start applying now to sort of comply with the CEDEN 2.0 system is that the project code and parent project code cannot be exactly the same. They need to be unique from each other. Tori asked, is for the method and digest extract, just is that the name or the code? It's the name, I think. No, it must be the code. I feel like I should know that. I'll confirm that. Stacy, go ahead.
It has to be the name because the
Yeah.
code is numeric.
Yeah. Okay. I was like, I don't think they have a code for method. Yeah. Thank you for helping my brain. Yes, that's the name. So that's why it's going to be hard. Yeah, the code is not like meaningful. They're just numbers. So I didn't update any of our documentation, our existing documentation, to put these new limits yet. I guess I kind of wanted to put it out there and get some feedback before we update documentation and start really enforcing these in our vocabulary management. But I think it's just going to make things easier in the long run for us to have less things to like crosswalk between older data and newer data. Okay, so there's a question that says, does it mean that some existing station codes have to be changed? Is there a way to keep the 25 limit for station code? So, you know, I will have Keenan and I are going to do a little analysis and see how many existing station codes are over the 25 limit, because I don't think it's that many. But basically, to add those stations in CEDEN 2.0, they would have to be cut down to 20. The one thing is we still have this like alias option where you can have a shorter code or like a different code, and then in the alias field, you can associate it with a longer code. So that will be one workaround for older ones. But I guess going forward with new ones, we don't want to keep doing that. We'd rather just have them match exactly. So if we have to change them to put an older station in CEDEN 2.0, we can still associate it with the longer station code by using that alias field. Tori, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can you explain more about the project code and the parent project code? They have to be different.
Yeah. So
than CEDEN, than the original CEDEN, or they can't be the same to each other. I'm sorry.
Oh, can't be the same to each other. No, they can.
Oh, okay, great. Okay.
Yes, sorry, that wasn't
I'm sorry. I was
clear.
like, wait, what?
I just meant like for a particular project, the project code for that project cannot be the exact same as the parent project code.
Okay, that makes sense.
in our current system, those are stored in two separate related
Yeah.
tables, but in our new system, they're actually stored in the same table and then like related a different way, not in separate
Okay.
tables. So they just
That makes
cannot
sense
be
now. Thank you.
exact. They need to be unique from each other.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad it's not as bad as you imagined.
Yeah.
Hey,
Okay.
Tessa, it's
Yeah, go ahead.
Jacob. Sorry if you already said this, but why are you shortening the station code length limit?
So any of these field length differences, it wasn't like a choice that we actively made, but because we are working with this vendor who has this existing schema and has like all this underlying code and logic built around that existing schema, there are just some things that we don't get to customize or change. So station code, that field, their existing limit is 20. And so we have to conform to that.
Okay. And you said the existing stations will need to get updated to be truncated to this 20 limit. Is that correct?
Most of our station codes are much shorter than 25. So I think it's a small subset. So yeah, Keenan's taking notes that this is going to be part of our one of our next projects to analyze how many station codes are too long. And so we're building all these crosswalk tables of like any names we have to change. Here's what the CEDEN existing name is, and here's what the truncated CEDEN 2.0 name is. So we're going to be having all those crosswalks, maintained. But ideally, anything new that we're adding now, we would just make it short enough so that we won't have to crosswalk.
Right. Okay.
To keep data comparable.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So we're running right on time. Great job, everyone. I'm going to wrap things up. So our next meeting is in August. So I'll send out an appointment for that. I think we had a couple items here that we need to keep discussing at the next meeting. But if you have other topics that you think would be good to discuss at this meeting, let us know. And so some of my action items, well, I was thinking that I would need to update the matrix definition, but I think I'll also need to review that again and also look at the runoff definition to make sure we're like really meeting the need. Sorry. Anyway, I can't get this off of my screen. But if you have ideas for improvements for the CEDEN query tool, let us know. And then some of those vocabulary changes to be consistent with CEDEN 2.0, we may start enforcing and put in our guidance document or vocabulary templates. Any comments, ideas for future items or anything else in our last minute here?
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead, Tori.
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Tessa, for pulling this together. We appreciate it. And for like the CVRDC and for RDC, we're not our clients aren't changing our CEDEN format. We're going to be crosswalking the data into your system in our own database. So our particular clients aren't going to have to change their chemistry template. So just
Okay.
putting that out there.
Yeah.
We'll be crosswalking in our own database so that they don't have to worry about that. We
Okay.
might have a little bit of adjustments to make sure, but it'll mostly be the same for us.
Okay, cool.
And that goes for us too,
Mhm.
since we share the same backend.
Yeah, we're all the same.
Yeah. And Paul, go ahead.
So if you if we have different data centers that are using different forms of the chemistry template, won't that be confusing for laboratories that are reporting to different clients?
I mean, I guess the thing is, well, I guess I would let the regional data centers decide that and work on that. So, yeah, go ahead, Tori, if you want to respond.
Yeah. Well, just to put out there that a couple of our labs have been using a template that we had for a really long time. So yes, that can definitely be confusing. And we were trying to figure out how we were going to say original CEDEN. But most of our labs that we currently work with, for sure, they already have everything set up for CEDEN for CEDEN. So it's going to be a big push for them to change it again. So for our particular clients, we're just keeping the same so we don't have to have that huge push because things are going to change, especially with the different data types. You're going to be having two different types of templates at one time. So it's going to be a lot easier for our clients just to have one type of template for a while. But yes, that might be somewhat of a confusing thing. So we're trying to figure out a naming convention of like original CEDEN or something like that.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good tactic until everything is shifted to CEDEN 2.0, and maybe then that would be a better time to make the shift for everything. So the regional data centers, we water boards, we don't control them. They're their own separate entities. So as long as they're they're crosswalking the data, getting it in the right format to get in the system, that's sort of their business decision of how to work with labs.
Yeah, and then when we can call it the new CEDEN 2.0. We've been just calling everything CEDEN 2.0 for the new stuff because that's how I've been talking to my project managers. It's CEDEN 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon, and I'll see you in August.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Tessa. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tessa. Bye.